So this is the official kind of Ionic Framework overview on their Ionic and React for building iOS, Android, desktop, progressive web. I have not built anything using Electron, but I have definitely used the Ionic Framework to build iOS app, Android apps, and some progressive web stuff using ReactJS. This is not me. I've already given my overview, kind of who I am. Briefly, as I said, Ionic Framework right now is a cross-platform JavaScript framework built with web components that allow you to apply the technology to build mobile apps and websites. I was really blown away by this huge number of how many people are actually using it and how many apps have been deployed. Someone mentioned to me today, I think the best way to kind of explain it for folks who are coming from the website is it's kind of like what Bootstrap was for the web when it first came out. I mean, the easiest way to think about the core of Ionic is that's basically what it is. It's a bunch of web components that allow you to easily build and put together mobile applications on iOS, Android websites using Vue.js, plain JavaScript, and React. The amazing thing about it, and when people actually dig into it and start to use it, it blows them away, is just the abundant amount of components that you have access to out of the box. So what it allows you to do is build a pretty compelling application without really being that great at design, CSS, or anything like that. We're going to touch on the native and the capacitor stuff, but just to talk about the top here, it really is the benefit of taking all of the existing experience that you have in building websites and applications using, in this case, specifically React, and then layering on top of it a set of components that can allow you to quickly build something that's productive. And then as you kind of get down to the capacitor, which, the best way to explain it for folks who are familiar with cross-platform development, it's supposed to be a tighter, better managed version of Cordova. So there's no phone gap. So you basically use Capacitor to compile, build, and act as a native bridge, which then gives you access to plugins. We'll touch on the Ionic native plugins, but there's also a way to basically take any. I think someone just popped in. There's also a way to take any existing. There's also a way to take any existing Cordova plugin and deploy a Cordova plugin in React, Vue, or Angular. And that's the thing that's pretty cool, that they've been able to kind of get that hooked up and to make it relatively seamless. As I said before, there's a tremendous number of web components that you have accessible to you out of the box. The big thing really is this right here, is that I can't highlight it, is this framework agnostic part. And that's the thing that I find really powerful for the work that I do, is that, we could take our team who might not be that great at React or Vue, but because they are very familiar with Ionic and how the components work together, they can quickly add value on other projects and build solutions based on any JavaScript framework, just because of the core experience that they have using Ionic Framework. Like they say, they have a dark mode built into it. They have all these different components. Also, I'll send you guys a link to this presentation, because it's kind of cool that you can play with all of the Ionic components right here in the deck. So these are examples of components and look and feel that you get right out of the box without having to do a lot of work. In fact, what you'll see when I walk through the resources and the documentation is a lot of the things that are here. They're snippets of code that exists in the documentation that you can just cut and paste and drop into your application, and it's just working. Like, these are things that normally people are spending a bunch of time trying to build themselves, that you just get out of the box. And what I think is critical is your ability to add the value on top of the basic solution, which is really what you're trying to do. You don't want to spend a bunch of time figuring out how to make a damn list. You want to figure out, how do I get the content that I need in the list to add value for the client? And I think that's really where Ionic Framework shines. So for example, this is the Ionic Framework code to kind of render this nice, well-designed card. You don't have to do any of your own CSS or any styling or anything like that. You just get this out of the box. Yes, you can add stuff on top of it, but this is just the starting point that you get. And the point to remember is, like, this is just plain old React in the end. So all your React skills come over, and then you layer the Ionic Framework on top, and it just, it just basically empowers you to quickly do a bunch more things. They've just added they've exposed the gestures API, so you can, a lot of the things that you would normally see on a mobile application, you can, through the gesture API, you can add those through the gestures and animations, you can add those the same user experience for the individual, once again, using the language that you're familiar with. So like all of this is just plain Ionic that's built using React. And then cool UI elements like this. It's really pretty amazing how they've been able to kind of package in, the kind of native look and feel, but just basically built with web. And they give you the components to kind of handle it yourself, so that you don't have to build it. The routing is a little bit different than how React Router works, but it's close enough that you should be able to jump right in and get it to work. It provides the expected page animations based on your platform for you, so you don't have to write them yourself. But there's also ways to kind of modify the animations yourself if you want to do something custom. And because it's just plain old React, all of your other React tools, your testing libraries, and all of these things fit in. To get React to work with it, you do need to incorporate this Ionic React testing utils to get it to work fine. Just as a side note, they don't mention it here, but I'm working on a project right now, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with Storybook. It's a way that allows you to kind of build your own components kind of separately and create this component library. Ionic Framework works really well with that. It's allowed me to do. I don't know. Did I turn it off? Yeah, I was going to try and show you, but I think I killed that project that I was running it on. Maybe if I have some time later, I'll show you. But what it allows you to do is to basically mock the content that's going into your specific component and kind of test the various scenarios. So like I'm building a product card, and I have in Storybook, I have an example of what the product card looks like with the long name, with the short name, with the long retailer name, with the short retailer name, if the item's on sale, if the item's not on sale, if the item's available, if it's not available. And normally in your app, just think about all of the cycles that you're making to go through and test all those different scenarios. Using Storybook, you basically can just create the scenarios, mock the data in, and just not have to deal with your whole app. So I'll add that list to, I'll add that link to the list also as something that we can talk about. Also, it allows you to create progressive web apps, or PWAs. The functionality is available out of the box. I think I've played with this a little bit on one project, but PWAs are starting to get a lot of traction. We're hearing some clients who ask about it as alternative to building iOS or Android apps. Also, it's great that they've thought about that. And then Capacitor, which is what I was saying, as they say here on the bottom. There we go. As they say here on the bottom, it's inspired by Cordova React Native, and I'm not really familiar with what TurboLinks is. But for some cool things that Capacitor Core does, not only is it kind of the native bridge for you to get your apps running on iOS or Android, they've kind of packaged in a whole bunch of core functionality that you expect. So in Capacitor Core, you get cameras, you get local notifications, you get geolocation, just a bunch of the core plugins that you would find normally on a phone. They add them by default to Capacitor Core. And they also validate and ensure that they will always work with Capacitor, which is one of the challenges for anyone who's used Cordova plugins for a while, is sometimes your plugin that you want to use hasn't been maintained or updated in God knows how long. And then you have to kind of track down the person who built it or post issues and hopefully see if they're going to respond and answer the questions for you. But anything that's in Capacitor Core is maintained by the Ionic team, and they make sure that it's always up to date and addressed. So that's very cool. Next. I mean, to me, here's my thought on you always see these arguments online about what platforms you should use. The React Native versus Ionic versus Flutter versus whatever is the new framework of the day. I think at the end you just have to use what works best for you. I think 75 or 80% of the time, any of those solutions will work fine and meet your needs. I think there's some edge cases that you need to be concerned, but I really think they're client specific. And so I really don't spend a lot of my time in these arguments. I have written code in React Native. I've written a bunch of code in Ionic. I've written some code in Flutter. I've done some Swift stuff too. I just find that for me to be able to build the solutions that I want to build, have the flexibility and a large enough community to address the issues that I might want to find, that at this point in my career and the work that I'm doing, sticking with a JavaScript-based solution just provides a bunch of options and flexibility. And so I'm good. And I think the fact that Ionic now supports React, it just gives it a much longer runway. I think React's going to be around for a while. So Ionic kind of hanging on to React. And so now having Ionic worked on React and Ionic worked on Angular, I think it's pretty secure that you can build on it and count that it's going to be there for a while. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to mention is they do have this kind of enterprise support plan where there's certain things that if you want to pay for an enterprise license, you get higher level of support. You get there's additional plugins that are considered enterprise plugins that have support from Ionic also. So it's something that if you have an enterprise client that's willing to pay for the enterprise license, it's something I would strongly recommend. I mean, in my past life, I did Titanium Accelerator work. And as you know, they had, well, if you don't know, they had a free tier, kind of like a community tier, and they also had an enterprise tier. And we worked mostly with the community tier, but for our larger accounts that wanted that kind of support, the official enterprise support that they provided was the thing to go to. And that's about it. I'm going to go to some resources now, and then hopefully actually get to the CLI and show you how they've implemented the Ionic CLI that can allow you to quickly spin up a mobile application yourself. Also, this app wizard thing that they kind of built is pretty cool too. You can come in here and specify an app name. Did you guys, hold on, let me paste the link in for anybody that wants to kind of play with this themselves. Copy link. Here's my chat. So you can check out this link. I'm going to kind of click. Someone got locked out. All right, looks like everybody's in. Okay, so All right. You can specify a name for an app. I don't have an icon. I'm just going to pick their icon that they have here. You can pick like a default theme for the color of things in your app. And then Ionic provides these default templates that you can get out of the box. So it's your normal 3-tab solution, your kind of drawer or slide-in menu that you get from the left, or just a plain list. I'll pick the menu. I'll pick React. And this thing will crank out. So now it's done this. I've already installed Cordova.res, but let me hop to this. I'll steal my project. Let me switch screens to my terminal. Hold on. Is that big so everyone can see it? So now, based on that information that I did, it set up the basic template for the application. It's now downloading all the required dependencies. Let me see if I try to get the Visual Studio Code open here. Just to let you know, because I've gone through this painful process a few times, the very first time you start up an Ionic React project, there is a tremendous amount of dependencies that it has to download, and so it will take a while. File open. ReactJS. I call this thing test app. Yeah, that's it, test app. We can start to look at some of the code as it's downloading the dependencies. It's a little bit too big. Hopefully you guys can see this. So what you'll see it does is all of these things starting with this Ion, these are all Ionic specific components that are loaded from Ionic React. Ionic has its own router, as it mentioned, but here it uses some of the default React functionality. This is all of the CSS that you need to kind of get the proper look and feel of your solution. But for those of you familiar with React, the rest of this should look pretty much the same. The important part is you need to wrap the whole app in this Ion app container. This is your Ionic router, which is basically the React router with the Ionic stuff placed on top of it. This is the split pane controller, which once we get this set up, you'll be able to see we have a side menu that allow you to kind of pick specific pages that will render. This is a route called page that a name is getting passed it as a parameter, and then it's going to render my component page, which is an Ionic component that got built for me. And this is the redirect, which will redirect you to a specific page, passing in the parameter for the name is inbox. Let's see if this thing is done yet, and I can, nope, it's still gone. So if we look at what an Ionic page actually looks like. Oh, another thing that you should be aware of, and it can be a gotcha at times, all of the Ionic templates for React generate its code using TypeScript. So TypeScript is kind of like the new big thing. Unfortunately, a lot of the examples that you're gonna run into are written into TypeScript. So you should find some TypeScript websites that you like and kind of bookmark them. You can get away with it by using any all over the place to tell. I'm trying to get you in. I don't know why that is. Hold on a second. Give me a second, guys. I'm pretty certain this meeting is set to hold like 100 people, so I'm not sure why this other person can't get in. Give me a second to take a look and see what's going on. All right, let's get back to this here. So I'm talking about TypeScript. So here we are. This is a regular page. All the pages in an Ionic app start with Ion page. We have our header, which will give us the toolbar you see across the top of a mobile application. We have the toolbar. Then we have our left. This is the start slot is to the left of the page, and then inside of that, because you could have multiple buttons on each side, so we wrap it with buttons, and then we say we're going to have a menu button on the left side. Then we have the title. All of the content of the page needs to be wrapped in this content tag. This header condense is to support how on iOS, how when you kind of scroll up in some pages, you can still see the title of the page. That's what this is. I usually just delete it. And then this is just another component contained. I mean, for those of you that are familiar with React, this should be pretty straightforward and look familiar to you. The additional ability to kind of use hooks and other things. Hold on a minute. The ability to use hooks and other things inside of your app, all of that React goodness comes along with Ionic. Okay, let's see if the thing is done so we can try and compile. All right, so now that it's downloaded all of its dependencies, we can just do Ionic serve, Ionic serve. Oops, sorry, I'm not in the project directory. Hold on. CV. So this is going to compile all of the Ionic code and do all its magic, and then it's going to start up a web server for the application for you. All right, so let me get this app over here. So this is, hopefully everybody can see this. This is the application that we had picked, and as you can see, it's being responsive, and that is it's as we get the large page, your menu is showing, but as we collapse down, it gives us our little side menu that kind of comes in from the side for us. And then to see it on a device, we switch our view and force it to treat as a mobile phone. This is kind of what the solution is going to look like on your phone. And so like this is a good starting point for your application. That was all done from using either that link that I sent, or also you could have started this up using the Ionic CLI to build out the start of your app. So I'm going to pause there for a minute and see if anyone has any questions. Or if there's anything specific about Ionic that you want to ask before I kind of go through the documentation and then walk through a more detailed example. While I'm here, before, because my other example is a little more complicated, and it's quite possible that when I try to build it, it might break. So I'm gonna take this basic application here, and we're gonna add Capacitor to it. So right now we're seeing it run in the browser. We'll add Capacitor, and we'll show you how from the command line you can get it running on your native device. And we're just gonna follow the instructions that we have up here. So first, let's stop the application. We are going to add iOS to it since I'm on a Mac. What did it run? What does it run? Cannot be found. Capacitor. Did I miss a step? It initialized capacitor. So why is it looking for it? Oh, I didn't do the build. Yeah, this is something I've run into this multiple times. So the capacitor is expecting to find a build directory with your app built for production. And since I didn't do that, that's why it's complaining. So the first step is Ionic build. And what that's doing, it's running the React build script to build the distribution of the app as if you were going to deploy it onto a website. So it's creating the optimized build production. And then if you look over in your project directory, you can see the build directory is being created with all the assets, and it'll package everything up inside of there. That's what it was complaining about there. So once it's done building that up, then we'll add the platform, specific platform to it. Okay, so now we will add the iOS to it. So this is for those people that are familiar with PhoneGap and Cordova, this is kind of the equivalent of adding Cordova and then adding the specific platform for Cordova. The other thing that you'll notice that's different here is that when you used PhoneGap and Cordova in the past, you didn't check in your build, basically didn't check in all of the platform-specific code. With Capacitor, you check in all of the platform-specific code. It goes along with your project. So now it's packaged up all the dependencies and everything that is needed. And the way that it works is you can, for the specific platform, you can run Capacitor to open up Xcode, which is what I've done here. And so now Xcode's open kind of to your specific project that's created. I know it's going to complain about the bundle identifier, so I'm going to just change it right now. So I'm certain there's already a bazillion Ionic starters. So, and then the signing capabilities. So I'll just use it to my personal team. I think I've done this a bit, so let's change this to a number I know I haven't used, 100. And then now just build it. And I am deploying this directly to my phone. Running on a real phone, but let me just get it running on a simulator, so at least you can see it deployed. Yeah. Right, this thing is finally compiled. So this is your application running on device. As I said, they've been pretty good at making it look like it is a real app running on a real device. And you know, that's really what these kind of cross-platform frameworks are focusing on giving you a native-like experience, but utilizing the technology stack that you're already familiar with. So there you have it, the same application running in window, running in my browser, and then also running on the phone. And I think I'm going to take a 5-minute bio break here because we've been kind of rolling for about 50 minutes. I need to get a drink of water and let my voice take a break, and then give you guys a couple of seconds of a break if you want to, and then I'll probably get started again. It's like 6:50. I'll probably get started around 6:55. And what we'll do, let me go back through my slides and see. I'm going to go to where there's some more resources because some people are asking about some people are asking about some more advanced examples. So when I go through some resources that are available, I'll point you to some more advanced examples. And then the last thing is I will demo how to use a plugin, which will give you access to native functionality on device, how you would integrate one into your application, and then using live reload. For those who've used kind of React Native, where it's got the live reload, where you're kind of you're writing code in your editor and you're making changes, and it's just automatically redeploying to device. You have the exact same functionality here with Ionic Framework, where as long as you're not adding any new native functionality, i.e. introducing any new plugins, you can just make changes to your React code. The server is basically watching the changes. It will recompile the website, and what's happening is that the way live reload works is that your device, it can be either the simulator or your actual phone, is pointing the web bundle that is running is pointing back to the website on your device as opposed to the website running on your phone. Might sound a little confusing, but I'll walk through a demo and you'll see how it works. And it's for someone who's done work with React Native and then now has had the ability to use live reload with Ionic. It's a very smooth experience. Gives you very quick round trips on your work and helps you be productive really quickly. All right. So like I said, I'm gonna probably sit to like 6:57. I'm gonna take about a 5-minute break. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thanks. let's start on the, so what do we say we're going to do? We're going to talk about some resources. So here's some resources. So first off is, am I sharing my screen? Yes. So first off is I have a fair bit of content on my GitHub repo that's React specific, and usually most of the stuff that I do also has Ionic Framework involved. So I just did a quick search here. I have 47 different repositories that are related to React. Probably all of them have a React and Ionic involved. It ranges from, I think this is a full-blown Ionic Framework React authentication flow that uses MobX for state management. There's a bunch of Firebase stuff. A lot of work that I do with Firebase. For some of the more newer topics in React, this is a multi blog post. I think it's, I'll show you my blog later. I think it's like 4 different blog posts and a whole series of building an application using Ionic Framework. And then I've used the new React hooks to build a hook that allows you to just drop the hook into your application and upload files to Firebase. This is some of my old Expo stuff. Here's one using the tabs template. Here's a side drawer. So there's a bunch of stuff here on my website. It's aaronk.saunders@github.com. I also, since the stay-at-home order, I've been way more active on my blog posts. So I've moved most of my blogging to Dev2. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's the thing that I like about it. It's very specific to development content. So I'm posting my link here in the chat to everyone in meeting. I have started. So let's go back. I think like December when. So I have a fair bit of Ionic stuff. I have Ionic Vue stuff for those of you interested in Vue, and I have Ionic React stuff that is also posted here. Things like using React hook form. So because Ionic is using web components, there's a little extra that you need to do to get tools like React Hook Form to integrate with your Ionic application. React Hook Form is a great way to manage your forms and your validation and getting the data out of them. This is a whole series and an example with source code on how to use React Hook Form with Ionic components. Let's see what else we have. This one walks you through how to use the file transfer plugin, which is a plugin that you can use to transfer files inside of Ionic application with React using Capacitor. Also, all of the source code is probably in my GitHub, or there's a link to an example of it in my code sandbox IO. This is a blog post on different ways to manage state, either using React context, using React hook, or using use reducers. So once again, check out, there's a bunch of content here. Always looking for suggestions for things to write content about. And then the last one is the video here. A lot of this. So also on my GitHub, if you go to my code sandbox, for those of you who don't know what code sandbox is, it is basically, it's what they've done is in a web browser, they have used the Visual Studio Code engine. So you get this full-blown text, you get this full-blown editor in a web browser. And as you build and compile your application, it's spinning up basically virtual machines to run your application. So this is a whole ReactJS example using Ionic Framework on how to manage state using React context that I started to build out in Code Sandbox to just kind of play with it and not have to deal with all the setup. I'll paste the link to my Code Sandbox account here. It's probably if you just want to see something running and see the code. So like here's a React hook form example that I built. It's all running in Code Sandbox. And you can just come here, check it out yourself. And then if you like the code, you can either fork the code. You can either fork the code into your own sandbox. You can take this code and download it. You can take this code and commit it into your own GitHub repo. But either way, you should definitely check out Code Sandbox. I think it's a great tool. I'll just go off on a tangent here. It comes with a bunch of different templates. So even if you're not doing React, it can generate a Vue.js template, Preact, vanilla JavaScript, like all these different frameworks here, Svelte, anyone's Nest, TypeScript, VuePress. It all can just be done here. And like I said, it'll spin up a virtual machine for you and run the thing in the server. It's a very, very cool tool, and it's helped me be pretty productive. And then the last resource I'm going to point to is, as I said, I've been really big on my content push. And so I've been aggressively working on my YouTube channel. And in my YouTube channel, I push out 2 videos a week. I alternate between ReactJS and Ionic, and Vue and Ionic. I've broken them out separately. Here's my Ionic React walkthroughs and tutorials. So I think there's about 8 or 9 videos that I have here on different. These are usually a little bit more complex topics. So there's another state manager that exists. It's called Overmind.js. I think, in fact, that's a state manager that underlies Code Sandbox. It's very similar to MobX, for anyone who's familiar with MobX. And the thing that I like about it, it's like it doesn't have a lot of the weirdness of dispatching and all this other crap that you get with Redux. Everything's just done with functions. So you deploy actions and you have state. And it has the dev tools that goes along with it, so you can kind of manage things and roll it back. And so that's what that example is. Like I said, all these are usually done using Ionic and React. I have a separate Vue channel here, which is all the Vue examples. I try to, anything that I write in React, I try to also write it in Vue. And then the newest one that I've just started is I have started this, I didn't want to play it. I've started a Ionic ReactJS Capacitor series. I'll drop 2 videos a week, and it's going to lead up to building a full-blown mobile application with authentication, plugins, integration to Firebase, and the use of another very cool tool called React Query. So for those of you who are familiar with how GraphQL works in React, React Query gives you that same ease of use, but it allows you to create your own persistence layer. So for example, it's probably easier to show a quick, and I am integrating this into the lessons that I'm teaching. So let's use this and see. It's pretty cool. They have this running in Code Sandbox, so you can just quickly spin it up. So where are we going to use it? So if you've ever used, let me make this bigger. If you ever used GraphQL before and you use a GraphQL hooks, you basically make a query and then it gives you the access to these properties to let you know the state. Is it fetching? Did I get an error? Did it get my data back? And what's the status? What this React hooks does, it allows you to basically use this approach. And then these queries can be whatever you want. So in this example, this query is just using fetch to grab data. You could use basically any REST-based API behind it, but you get the ease of use of the hooks and the state and all this other information that comes back with you. I have an example of this on my GitHub repo also, but it's just another cool tool that can help make you much more efficient and focus on generating value for yourself, your project, or whoever your client is. So that's it for the resources. And so now for the last part, I will touch on a full-blown app with Capacitor running on device. So let me now. Did anybody have any questions on that before I jump to something else? If there's a link I missed, let me just put my email in here. I think that I've included everything in the chat. I will send everyone a copy of the chat thread so you can get all these links out of here. I put my email in there. So if there's anything that anybody missed, you can get to it. For styling, someone just asked a question about styling. So you get the React, you can apply styles to the Ionic components just as you would to any other component. So there's nothing different there. And I think actually Matt Lynch, one of the guys from Ionic, has an example floating around somewhere where they've actually used, what is that? There's the, damn, I'm blanking on the name of it. Styled elements. Yes, I think that's what it's called. The style elements that exist in React. You can use that with Ionic. So there's nothing keeping you from using any of the other technologies or frameworks that you use in React, because at the end of the day, all these React components they're just web components. Underneath it all, it's still just HTML. It's still just a DOM. So you should not have any problems with your styling. Okay, what am I? I'm sharing my desktop. So let me switch to my phone. Yeah. Okay. So this is a. Let me restart this guy. So this is an Ionic Capacitor application that I'll send you a link with all the source code in it that allows you to take a video or take a picture. Take a picture is pretty straightforward. I allow you to take a picture or choose from my photos that I have already. I won't do that because I don't know what kind of personal stuff I'll show, but I'll show you. You can take a video. So I'm taking a video with my. Oh, that's pretty cool. I have to get the video and the video and the video at Infinium, and this is a video of me. And then we end the video. We'll start the video. We end the video. We use the video, and then we are uploading the video to Firebase. So that's the app. Now let's take a look at the code. Share. Okay. So the first thing is that this application is. All right, let me show you. This application is run using live reload. So let me end this and show you all that. So this, and hopefully you can see this. This is kind of the shorthand, but it's basically saying Ionic Capacitor run on an iOS device using live reload, and it's on an external server. So what that's doing is, let me run this. What this is doing when it starts up, it is compiling the React application with the React script start. And then you can see here where it says the project is running on my local server. So if I click this, I'm sure you won't be able to see that because I'm just sharing my screen. Let me just share my whole damn screen again. Hold on. It's going to be easier to share my whole desktop for now. So it's spun up, and it's basically running my application as a website at this address, right? So if I click and I open it, is that where it's running? Yes, it says it's running there. All right, so if I drag this over, you'll see, so my app is running at this address, right? But what the capacitor is doing in the background is when you ran that command, it has modified this. It's modified this capacitor config to tell the application that the web server you're looking for is at this address, not locally on the device. So that is how the magic of live reload works. So now what that means is if I now run my application again, so I'm going to switch back to my device so that you can see it. So you see now my device is running. Everyone should be able to see that. And then it allows me to now change just the web specific stuff of my application. So for example, I can go up here and say, and it should just, and so you saw that, how it just added, it just, the website specific code got changed on my local application, on my local version of the website that's running. But since the native device, and if I go back to Xcode, let me switch, I hate this switching back and forth, but let me switch it back to my desktop. If I switch back to my desktop, you can see inside of Xcode, let me make this a little bigger, where my app's running. You see here it says loading app from this IP address. This is the same IP address as my local browser. And so that's basically how this is working. My changes that I make inside of my text editor force the website to recompile. And then, so like, let me just take this out again. So see, I made the change, it's recompiling, it's redeployed the website, and if I go back to my phone, which is where I am now, you can see that the change is deployed there. So that's what kind of makes this. So if I update the web code in Visual Studio Code, it will automatically update Xcode. Yes, that's exactly what it's doing. But actually, let me be more specific. It's not updating Xcode because what's happened is that the bundle that got deployed to the phone, along with it, the configuration file got deployed, and that configuration file said, the website that I need you to run on device is running at this IP address. It's not running locally, right? So it's not really updating anything in Xcode or anything on the phone. The phone is just looking at your local device to find the website to render. That's basically how it's working. Does that make sense? Cool. Now the question was, how did I get the native devices, native plugins in? So in my app, and just to quickly walk through my application, we discussed how the router works. It's a straightforward application. Hold on, let me share the right thing. Back to my code. We covered this before. Straightforward application has one route, which is the home route, which brings you to the main app page. You look at the home page, and we'll just show kind of the use of basic React stuff. We're using a use effect, which is going to call this function anytime these two values change. We have, and someone is asking about stylings here, I can just set the class name on an object, or I can actually apply styles directly to the object also. Ionic provides the progress bar, which is what you saw across the top. So I don't need to write that. I just take the Ionic progress bar, I pass it values, and it automatically updates. Where's my video? Where's my video? Here's my video button to handle take video. And so what we'll see is that inside my video, handle take video, there's this plugin that I'm using called Video Capture Plus. Video Capture Plus got loaded in through Ionic Native. Let me just go. I don't think I just spoke about Ionic Native. Ionic Native is a set of plugins. Actually, Ionic Native isn't plugins. Ionic Natives are wrappers around plugins, popular plugins that are used by the Ionic community that are TypeScript or TypeScripted, so it makes it a lot easier to use. And so let's see, Video Capture Plus, video PQRST, Video Capture Plus. So here's Video Capture Plus. So this is a regular Cordova plugin. So this is a Cordova plugin, but what they've done is, and you see they have, here's how you install it for Cordova, here's how you install it for Capacitor. So what they've done is, this is installing the Cordova plugin, then this is installing the wrapper, the Ionic Native wrapper around the Cordova plugin. And then this Ionic Cap Sync, what this does is, it will force Ionic to, for iOS, any pod files that are needed, it will download the pod files, synchronize them, and deploy them to the build directory for iOS. And for Android, it'll set up the Gradle and bring on anything that it needs to do. And then it explains to you how to actually use them. Please make sure you follow the C here for how to use React plugins. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time, killing yourself. They work a little bit different on React than they work in Ionic, and the documentation here walks you through and explains the difference. So here I have I've downloaded Video Capture Plus. There's a couple of other interfaces that I get for TypeScript to keep TypeScript happy. The basic way that this plugin works is you set the options. So I'm saying I want to record one video. I want it to be HD. This returns a promise, so I'm using async await. I pass the options. I captured video, which basically goes and executes the native code to bring the video camera up. It records the video, and then it returns to me a media object that has the path of where the video is I just recorded. Now, for anybody who's worked with Cordova in the past, the file system is jacked up, and you usually have to jump through hoops to find the files and do all the things you need to do. So that's what all this code is. It's trying to figure out how the hell to get the path that was given to me to convert it into something that the file system likes. And then I resolve the path. And then once I get the path, what I'm doing here is I'm reading it as an array buffer, because Firebase likes to upload blobs. This code converts it to a blob. And then this is my Firebase hook that I'm using. And so I'll quickly jump into that. So, and also all this code is up in my GitHub repo. This is my Firebase file upload hook that I wrote. That works very similar to the use query thing that I just showed you. So if we go back to the home page, where's my hook? All right, so here's my Firebase file upload hook. So in the configuration of the hook, you give it your Firebase information. And then what this does is it gives you back, when you upload a file, it'll give you back all the information about the file you just uploaded. It keeps track of the state, so it'll let you know, is it loading a file or not? It gives you back an error if an error happens, and this gives you back the progress in a file upload, which allows me to give you the progress bar across the top. And then it returns two functions also. This is the function that if you give this function a blob or a file, it will assume you want to upload it and will just automatically start the upload process for you. And if an error happens, you call this function and it clears the error. So what we're doing here is after we convert this thing to a buffer. We just call my set file data. We pass it to blob, and then the Firebase hook kicks in. It takes the file, it creates the file, uploads it to Firebase, passing back the progress information, and then if it ends successfully, remember, since this is reactive, if it ends successfully, my data response has a new value. And then in my page, in my render, you're seeing that if I have a data response, then I render the image. And then I also take whatever the text was, that's the text you saw on the screen, and I JSON stringify it so it can be printed on the page. Why is TypeScript used over regular? Why TypeScript's used over regular JS? Because since I've been coding long enough, I can say this, because all the people who complained about the lack of type checking in JavaScript wanted a solution, and that's what TypeScript is. So TypeScript, basically what it does is it can find errors for you in the precompile process that you normally can't find if you just use regular JavaScript. So to use, where's someplace I'm actually using types? I don't think I used any here. The basic way to look, I think do you know Java? Yes, you know Java. So you know how in Java, for any function call, when you specify a parameter, you got to specify the type of the parameter, and if the type's incorrect, it'll throw an error for you before you actually run the app. It's basically what TypeScript's giving you the ability to do that inside of JavaScript, and that didn't exist before. So in JavaScript before, if a function required a string and I passed it a number, the thing would just blow up on me. Right now with TypeScript, if you attempt to pass a string into a function that requires a number, you'll see a little squiggly line or some sort of error if you're running ESLint and all the other things properly in your browser. Does this have types? Yeah, this says types. So like this type here requires a string. And so if I change this value to something other than a string, what can I make this and not screw my code up? It's giving me that error saying the argument of type 100 is not assignable to a parameter of a string. React using TypeScript now? Yes, React. Yes. The thing with Ionic, you can, if I wanted to in my basic, I close my other Ionic. Yeah, this is my test app Ionic that I created. If I wanted to, I can go through and just rename all these to JS files, to JSX, and it would still work. So I think, did I answer the questions about TypeScript? Hopefully, yes. Cool. That's basically what I have for today. Thank you, folks, for checking it out and coming through. I'm always open. Flutter seems to be touting build one to use it on desktop or phone. React doesn't seem to have that. Actually, yes, it does. I mean, interestingly enough, now you could actually, I don't know if you've ever seen Expo. Expo grew out of Create React app, and then now it got so big that they've kind of gone back to the original Create React Native app. Yes, and now with Create React Native, you could have it deployed to the website, right? So you with React Native, you can build an app in React Native, and the same way with Ionic, you can push to native. React Native's gone the opposite way. It can take a React Native app and it can deploy it as a website, the exact same way that Flutter is doing. If you, I mean, Google around it. If you can't find anything, hit me back up. And I was actually just looking into some of that over the weekend, and it's pretty impressive how it works. I still have some problems with their tooling. It's not as smooth as, I think the idea of going from native to web is not as smooth as going from web to native. And so for anyone who's used React Native before, you know the problem. Like, you run it a couple of times, then you just have to basically restart everything because it just gets in this weird state. but it was pretty cool. I have played a fair bit with Flutter. The challenge for me with Flutter is I don't know if you've used it, but the challenge for me is that it's just a completely different way at looking at building applications. Like this whole kind of component hierarchy, and the way that everything is a widget is it's it's a different mindset, and it's hard to kind of hop back and forth between Flutter and just building plain JavaScript applications. At least for me, I don't know if you've had a different experience that you might want to share with everyone about it, but I mean, I have to admit that I'm pretty impressed with the quality of the solutions that you can build, um, and Google's commitment. Like they crank out a lot of content on how to build things with Flutter. The documentation is extremely good. A heavy focus on animations and trying to give everything that really professional look. So it's. I mean, I encourage you guys to check it out. My whole attitude with writing software is you need to find what works best for you and what you're comfortable with, and then just turn off all the extra noise. And so if Flutter works for you, use Flutter. If React, use React. If Swift. Just find what works for you and just stick with it, and stop chasing all the noise, because there's just a lot of noise out there that can just be distracting to you. So I'm going to end it there unless anybody has some more questions. You're welcome. And like I said, I have a bunch of content on my websites. Please check it out. Also, please, everyone here, please do me a favor. I think there's like 8 or 9 people here. If every single person here subscribes to my YouTube channel, if you haven't already, I think I will finally crack the 1,000 subscribers point, which is critical to me because, yes, everything that I post on YouTube, I post a source code in my GitHub repo. Everything that I post on Dev2 for any of my blog posts, I post a source code. I'm not, as I said, I posted on Twitter the other day, I'm not doing this kind of ConvertKit scam where I give you a little bit of the content and then I ask you to give me your email address to get the source code or the rest of it. No, it's all just up there. I'll find other ways to generate revenue other than kind of, hold on, let me write that down. I'll find other ways to generate revenue other than kind of beg you for your email address. The main reason why I'm trying to get over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube is that I've discovered that there's no way for me to like email directly people who subscribe to me on YouTube until you get to 1,000 subscribers, because then at that point they give you access to some community tools. So I have all these subscribers that I want to send emails to so if I do a blog post or something, I want a way to let them know. And right now I currently can't. Or even like this meetup tonight, there was no way for me to let my followers on YouTube, my subscribers on YouTube, know that I was having a meetup tonight. So, YouTube. The next meetup, right now, I'm probably going to try to do one monthly. Before we were doing them every other week, and I think people just got kind of overwhelmed. So I will do one monthly, but as I said, I'm posting content every week. So there'll be new. Right now, I'm in my React mode because I'm trying to get through this React course I'm putting online. So there'll be new React content posted weekly. I'm on my YouTube channel, and I usually try to do a tie-in blog. But if there's, someone asked before about more advanced topics. If there's more advanced topics that you would like to see, please, send me some suggestions. I'd like to kind of mix it up. Because like I said, I still work with clients, and working through interesting and more challenging problems, in my opinion, just prepare me to be able to serve my clients better when they come to me with a complex problem. You might have already thought it up, we've solved it, and then when the client asks for it, it's already paid for itself, right? Because then I can take the complex solution and tweak it a little bit, and we're done. So everybody wins. So once again, thanks everybody for showing up. I am going to I think the easiest way, since I don't think that this thing gives me everybody's, I don't, I don't know if I have everybody's email address. You have my email address. I'm going to cut out the kind of pause and stuff, but I'm going to take this video and I'm going to cut it up and I'm going to post it on YouTube. And then any of the links that I pasted here, I will put in the YouTube content also. So if you want to take a look at it, that's where you will find it. So thanks everyone for coming through tonight, and enjoy it. And yes, someone has asked about Storybook. I will maybe what I'll do in the next meetup, I will walk through how to use Storybook in your application. I think, I mean, I've known about it for a while. You can use Storybook with React. You can use it with Vue. You can use it with Angular. And I've dabbled with it, but on this React project that I'm working on right now, I'm really trying to kind of, accept this whole component first approach. And working with Storybook forces you to do that component first approach. And just so what I'm doing is my top level pages are where all the kind of data access is and the business logic. And then all I'm doing is I'm pushing data down to my components. And it lends itself really well to Storybook because you can just, so for example, in the solution I'm working on now, we have a search that we need to do, and we have a bunch of filters that you can search by, and some of the filters have to render modal dialog boxes. One of the filters needs to allow you to do a type ahead to find a specific address. And then on the same page, you have this list, and then on the list, you have the list items, and then the list items have specific components inside of them. And, before trying to write, build, and test all that in the app at one time was just a big pain in the ass. And then once I started breaking things out into components and putting them into Storybook, and I don't have I'm still sharing my screen. I don't have this project running right. Let me see if I can just quickly show you what I mean with this project. So after you install and configure and get Storybook set up, you just get another run script on it. And as you can see what it's doing, it's just spinning up a completely separate web server. And it has the ability to kind of load up your components. It's a little bit smaller. All right, so now my Storybook is running. And so like they give you the basic example of like, this is a button that has text. This is a button with an emoji. And if you look at the stories, let me close this. A story is very basic. So like the text story is it's just a button with just text. The emoji button's a button with an emoji. So what it does is you set up all these different scenarios as stories. And then you're able to kind of see how they'll render themselves. And then what it allows you to do is kind of work through the issues at the specific component level. But then also it provides you this kind of self-documenting structure here inside of this Storybook. There's a bunch of plugins that you can add to this, so you can actually add documentation. There's ways to run tests on it, and also there's stuff inside the Storybook. So for example, in our project, we have this modal dialog, right? And before, to get to this modal dialog, I had to log in, I had to navigate, and then I had to do a search. And so every test that I wanted to do for this modal dialog, I had to go through this process. But now I can just, so for example, this modal dialog has two states. It has its plain state, and then I have a modal dialog where it requires you to specify if the address you're entering is a business or personal, right? So I can just have my basic modal dialog kind of story, and then the different scenarios are here, and I'm piping in the specific data that I need. And then it also allows me, based on actions, to get the data back. So what I want to do with this is, after I run it, so it's actually running the code, and I select the address, the action of actually saving it emits an event. And what it's able to do is verify to me that the event it's emitting is the handle closed, and that I'm actually getting the right objects returned from it. And I can test all of this without running my whole app. And it's just by just creating different stories. And so to just quickly show you what a story looks like. So this is the, over here, this is the whole component, right? And as I said, it's buried deep inside some other page, but now because I'm using stories, I need to set up for the Ionic stuff, so all the styles and everything, so it renders properly. But this is, I just specified a component that I needed to load, and then I just have the component embedded, and then I'm mocking the specific scenario that I want. So here in this basic show modal, the scenario I want is, I just needed to show the modal. So I set the flag to true. I don't want to show the location information. But in this scenario, I want to show it, but I do want to see the location information. And so I just mock it to whatever value I want. And so you can imagine for much more complex, so let's see if these work, right? So like I'm testing a cart. So this is a cart that has multiple items set. I need to make sure it renders it properly and calculates the scenario. This is a cart with a long name. I'm testing it's drawing properly. Just a basic cart. A cart that's on sale to ensure that it's showing the sale. And then a cart that's on sale that has multiple items. And then here's like me testing a whole cart together. And this is a cart that cannot, oh, that's a bug. Yeah, no, this is a cart that where I actually can edit it. So I have the ability to slide it and delete the item. And this is one where I can't edit it. And so it doesn't work. My product card, one with the long name, retailer with the long name. Is it on sale? Is it available? Is it not available? So creating all of these stories and being able to mock the data allows me to kind of work through this UI and address these UI issues without, for anyone who's done a lot of development, that kind of cycle of change, compile, test, it just crushes you. And with Storybook, it takes that pain away from you. So I'll definitely try to do a more detailed example of this maybe in another meetup. And because the cool thing about this is it's platform agnostic. It doesn't care if you're using Ionic or whatever you're using. You can use a Bootstrap or any of the other things, and you still get the same benefit. Is to like speed up your efficiency around that kind of user interface cycle that you spend a lot of time on. So that's what I got for tonight. And once again, thanks for everyone for chiming in. I appreciate everybody who came on tonight, and feel free to provide suggestions on additional information and additional topics for the next meetup. Thanks, and have a good night.